The bill obviously has been hugely controversial, primarily because the impression has been given that there's one element of reform, namely a lay majority on JAB, will be some kind of silver bullet which will magically transform our judicial system. To date, there's no doubt about it that it has been drawn from one cohort of Irish society, and there is no doubt that it lacks diversity. The bill addresses just one factor in a number of things that require to be addressed if we were to overhaul the antiquated ways in which our judicial system works. I did note that the judiciary itself has sought changes, and in fact I've just quoted from something in the Irish Times in 2014. It says, in a rare intervention to judges through a committee chaired by Chief Justice Susan Denham and including representatives of all court jurisdictions, are sharply critical of the demonstratively deficient system and say wide-ranging changes are needed to attract high-calibre applicants. It is increasingly clear that the relative success of the administration of justice in Ireland has been achieved in spite of, rather than because of, the appointment system. I probably would, I think it's fair to say, would disagree on what the solution is with Susan Denham. I think it's one thing that can be guaranteed when it comes to any system reform, is that there will be always resistance, and that resistance will usually come from insiders. And we're not very good at creating new institutions. Our justice system is an inherited system, and any reforms, and many of those inherited systems we have been piecemeal reforms, and we don't do radical reforms. We, the Social Democrats, most certainly don't believe the bill is perfect, but it's a move towards the kind of reform required to bring the judicial system out into the light and make it more accessible, more diverse, and ultimately more fit for purpose in a modern Ireland. I'd say that, and I would say that, but qualified by saying it does require, in our opinion, significant amendments. The emphasis on the so-called lay majority has been, in my opinion, misrepresented. The bill sets out a mechanism for a committee of 13, the majority of whom shall be lay members with a lay chair. The way things are portrayed, I think it gives the impression that the lay members are just randomers that will be picked off the street. But I've got to say I do have a problem with Section 15 with the way that's constructed, and that's one of the areas I think that does need amending. There are people working, for example, in the Free Legal Aid Board. There are legal academics, there's victims advocates, and there are people from all walks of life, where people have expertise in dealing with, very often, the outcomes, for example, of the like of sentencing policy that could offer some extremely useful input. Because with the best will in the world, simply changing the system as to how judges are appointed will not change how judges administer the law or affect sentencing outcomes. And I'm just using that as an example because a few years ago I attended the Irish Penal Reform Trust annual lecture. The focus on that particular occasion was on the topic of sentencing guidelines and the work of the Sentencing Council. I was shocked to note the difference in how the UK system works and how well it's resourced when compared to ours. In the UK, ongoing training is the norm in order to ensure consistency in sentencing. There are ongoing efforts, and when I say properly resourced, they went through the kind of methodology that they use. I was really impressed with it, I've got to say, because it's recognised that you simply won't get consistency unless you put a system in place. It doesn't happen by accident. Once a rigorous system is in place, then it matters less who actually is sitting in the chair. They will work within a proven system, thus removing the likelihood of random, inexplicable sentences or other decisions which are open to human error. The other interesting thing I took from the UK example is the makeup of their Sentencing Council, a body with a number of non-judicial members. It wasn't a majority in this case, but all with senior roles in the field of justice. It was the opinion of the keynote speaker, Justice Coleman Tracy, that the breadth of viewpoint had enhanced the work of the Sentencing Council. It was quite interesting to hear that. We believe that some of the same will be true of JAB, and so we will support this bill at second stage. But we do so with serious caveat that we don't see it as a panacea for fixing a system which urgently requires greater diversity and modernisation. And obviously there are several sections that I think require amendment. It is important to note that the judiciary has served us well, and there is no doubt there are very good examples of decisions, but there are also many examples of poor decisions. And I think we can't just have a blanket that every decision is good, otherwise we wouldn't have miscarriages of justice, otherwise we wouldn't have decisions that are appealed and all of that. And but it has largely been good. We constantly argue that second stage should be based on the principle of the legislation, and very often resent the fact that government stop legislation going from second stage to committee and report stage. I think the kind of shoes on the other foot on this occasion with the way things are panning out. But I think this is an example that that a piece of legislation can be improved at committee and report stage. And I noted this morning the Taoiseach said that the government would be accepting amendments, but then he qualified it quite quickly. And I think that there needs to be an openness to improving this legislation and in being open to accepting challenging amendments. It did go through pre-legislative scrutiny, and I know it spent quite a while there, and I think that's one of the better examples of Oireachtas reform. And I think there were things at that stage that were highlighted, and I think there would be quite a lot of expertise built up from that stage that will be brought to bear in bringing forward amendments. But we will be supporting it at second stage. Thank you.